Hey, this is Vu, and a ton of people wonder what the difference between a professional game and a matchmaking game really is, other than the skill level, which is obvious. The skill level is really the least interesting part. There's a few things that go into it that make it a totally different game. It's almost like you're not even playing CS. Now, the most obvious place to visually see the difference between pro games and matchmaking are executes. Have you ever seen a pug execute that looks anything like what you see in a pro game? No. And honestly, I rarely see a pug execute that looks like an execute at all. Pro executes have crisp flash plays where people peek out right after a flash. They've got the correct distinction between a fast pop play and a slow set piece where you're mollying out everything. They've got people running lines that are complementary and people actually pushing in. As well, when you're watching a pro game, you will never, ever see an execute that looks anything like this. People not peeking off of flashes, people too scared to push in, people sitting in the middle of the open for way too long. This is what you see at high levels in matchmaking and in pugs in any variety. We're going to stop picking off the low-hanging fruit. One of the biggest differences is fine-tuning. Plays have been discussed, tuned, and retuned by a team's coach, their analyst, their manager, their backup, some of the players' moms, maybe their barber, their hairstylist. They've been discussed by everyone involved, so everyone is clear on what roles are, why the strat works, and everything involved. On non-pro teams, they probably don't have a coach, maybe they just have a hairstylist. Now, not only do these things make set plays run more smoothly, it makes non-set plays run more smoothly as well. Everyone knowing their role and when certain things happen, how they can and should respond, utility in situations, these are all important things to know. But one of the things that you probably don't notice is protocols. A good example is something like an Inferno B take. When you're going back to B on Inferno, you, a casual, you're probably thinking to run in with like a smoke CT or something. But when you have a pro team, they've broken it down to the minutia of the play. They know what the protocol is in terms of which utility is most important. For example, they might say, for a B pop, we need at least a CT smoke and a God flash, and we'll throw it in this order, and this is how we'll run it. And that means that even in plays that aren't set plays, simply plays like running back B late in a round are going to look crisp and clean as compared to something like matchmaking. Now, obviously, they're not playing with random teammates, and they can trust their teammates as well as they've gone over things with their teammates. So this is also a little bit obvious. One of the things that's harder to see is the actual play difference. When you're playing a matchmaking or a pug game in general, you're looking to exploit your opponent's mistakes. You're doing things like walking out through a smoke, perhaps. You're taking aim duels that perhaps maybe you shouldn't, and you're not too worried about overpeaking or giving up an advantage, and you probably do it quite often. However, when you're looking at an actual competitive game, because things have been run over so many times, it stops being about exploiting your opponent's mistakes and starts being about not making mistakes yourself. You're going to make significantly less mistakes, and so will your opponents, so you need to make sure that instead of doing crazy things to catch people off guard, you're taking any advantage you can get and running with it to the other bomb site and planting it. Any mistake you do make is simply going to be punished at a very high percentage, so mistakes are rarely made, and this is where things become really clear. You see a player that's played competitive, they go into a pug, and it's like a whole different world. Their opponents are playing overly aggressive, they're not flashing angles they should be, everything looks funky, and that's a major difference. It's also important to understand that this is where the game gets really fun. When you have a team that does things optimally, you can have a metagame. If your opponents are never peeking an angle without a flash, then playing anti-flash works really well. And if playing anti-flash is strong, then dry peeking is strong. And so you can actually go down that rabbit hole all the way to the bottom where you'll find Astralis, or whichever team I'm coaching. The reality is, if you've played with a very serious team that goes over things like protocols, executes, and has a playbook, and then you go back to pugs, you will instantly understand the real difference. It's like an entirely different world. One of the ways I often put it when I talk about the difference is looking at a scale of your decisions. When you're playing a pug, you make every decision pretty much uncontested. You can decide to do whatever you want whenever you want. Then when you look at something like a 10-man, you're going to be a little bit more limited. You're going to be trying to make sure you're playing with the team. You're going to be trying to regroup when your team wants to regroup, and that means your decisions are going to go down a little bit. Then you go into a scrim at a lower level team, and your decisions are going to go down even more because you're playing with an IGL who's telling you the strats and how you're going to be playing. Then you go even further and you play on a more coordinated team where you're focusing in on protocols, on set executes, on all these types of things, and you're making not that many major macro decisions yourself. A lot of that is predetermined. So you need to make sure that the micro decisions you're making are on point consistently. And that's where things get interesting. That's where CS is fun. I figured I'd take a look at the end of this video to show you a round from a pro game and a round from a Faceit 10 game to show you the difference between good players and a professional environment, how it really differs. So we're going to take a look at two different A hits from different perspectives. This one here is obviously the pro game since I'm in it. I'm just joking, it's Faceit 10. We got a force buy here, and the opposing team is gonna go for an A exec, but they just take so long, it's just easy to deal with. So Flash has come out, I throw a supportive Flash to help out. You can expect that from a lot of players at many different ranks. As they come out, they just take forever. They just take so long to get out, and this angle I'm at here is a very standard angle. You jump up on the bench, they can't see your feet, and you catch them when they try and swing on the site. Very standard situation, and you see a variety of different ranks will molly this. Very standard to push this player out of position because it's such a strong position. It's also standard to try and get out as quickly as possible to prevent this angle from being dangerous. Instead, they took so long, they wasted a molly that missed under balcony. They had to re-molly from in the open, and I'm just gonna get 2 free kills in the back, despite, taking a couple of extra bullets maybe than I should have. And after that, the round is essentially over. That was just a very sloppy A take, not clearing out many different angles, and A-execing on an anti-eco is, somewhat suspect to begin with. And despite, TJ 2025 hitting a nice shot, doesn't really matter when your whole team died on A. All right, so if we take a look at a second A-execute round, this time we've got G2 versus Big Clan, and this is going to be Nico. And I know what you're thinking, isn't Nico basically on an FPL team anyways? And you're wrong, he did leave FaZe, he's on G2 now. So they go for the exec, nice little flash to clear out Palace if an opera's at that angle. He does that in FPL too, by the way, it's not just in here. He's gonna go for a molly under balcony from in a safe angle. Off of that, the smokes are going to land, and he's going to go very aggressive from Palace here, trying to catch the CT rotate. He beats that molly, he gets a couple kills, and then he's immediately posted on that bench run through. He knows it's a potentially dangerous situation. He's full posted on it. Then his team is even going to molly it, and he can drop into the site here, throw some utility towards jungle to prevent that early push through, and he can go in for the after plant following that. You can definitely see a difference. The mollies are landing on time. Players know the dangerous angles, and they're worried about the right positions. Flashes are coming over, and players are working together in general. Much more coordinated, and that allows for just a more fun gameplay in my mind, where your opponents aren't going to be trolling. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope this helped. If you'd like to see more, hit up the Patreon, patreon.com/FuCSGO. Absolute legend.